Hello and welcome to the Shamanic Birth Podcast with your host Eva Greenslade. Today I've got a really lovely, exciting conversation with Aimee Lakshmi Hamblyn, or Aimee Hamblyn, as you'll find her on her website. Aimee is a birth worker. And do you want to introduce yourself? Actually, you can do it much better than I can. Describe
Thank
yourself
you.
and what you do and what you offer.
Thank you. So lovely to be on your podcast and as always chat with you as we always have lots in common and lots to connect about. So yes, my name's Aimee Hamblyn. That's my given name by my parents, but I also have a spiritual name which was given to me by my teacher Gayatri, and that's Sri Lakshmi, and some people call me that as well. So I guess it, as an introduction, it would be good to say that I am a doula. I've been a birth worker I'm working with families since 2010, um, primarily as a doula and postnatal doula, and I became a doula educator with developing doulas in 2019. So I'm very lucky that I get to train and mentor some new doulas coming into this beautiful work. And I guess my work primarily started with supporting the perinatal period, but it's kind of expanded in the last few years, and I'm also supporting families kind of beyond the perinatal period. So I have clients that I work with at really any point in their family journey, in their parenting journey, in their mother or father journey, even clients who come to me before they've become parents to help with conception, or preparing for pregnancy, but lots of support recently, in the last couple of years, around helping people parent in a way that feels kind of authentic to them, and helping them with those challenges of, oh, I wanted to behave differently in that parenting situation, and why can't I do it? Like what's happened that I am unable to parent from a place that aligns with my values. So I think in any point of the parenting journey, and why the kind of spiritual tools or the healing tools become very useful is in that way that of going inwards to find our connection with what is authentic to us, and what is our own connection with our own personal power. Where does that power come from? How can I help to kind of bring into consciousness the parts of me that are kind of wounded or kind of trapped in an older state of consciousness, or in a fear state of consciousness. How can I bring that back so that I can meet this particular part of my parenting journey in the fullness of who I am, and aligned with my values. So I guess there's a lot of healing around attachment wounds, is essentially what I feel that is the kind of the core of the work, and using um, energetic tools, spiritual tools, sometimes shamanic tools, um, to support clients with that.
Mm. So
Um,
that's from pre-conception to um, having an older family.
yes. Yeah, I mean, I would say that the majority of my clients are still pregnant, birth postnatal, but I do work with people beyond that kind of window, because that really started because I realized people needed support beyond that fourth trimester. Like
Yeah.
it's not like parenting suddenly gets like super easy. But there were challenges all along the way, um, in all stages of, parenting, and especially I think what happens is that our child or children might reach a developmental point that then what's happening with them kind of is triggers something in us that needs to be looked at, and that's often where we start parents, we're like, well, what came out of my mouth then? I don't even believe those words that just automatically came out of my mouth. Or why am I losing my temper in this situation when my rational mind says that was completely out of proportion to the situation. So I think parents do need support all the way along the journey. I know I have. My daughter's coming up to 15 now. And also in terms of like that pre-pregnancy time, um, yeah, I've been really blessed to support clients either who they're wanting to start a family and maybe they've encountered some challenges in conceiving, or maybe they're thinking about a second or third baby and they're not sure, and so there's stuff to work out around that. So also, yeah, I think there's a lot to be held in the in that entire journey of becoming a parent and being and birth and parenting.
Hmm. Could you describe a little bit for people listening what you might do in a session with somebody, um, either preconception or even or preparation for birth, that is coming to you, and you get that sense that I can't remember how you described it just now. You said about ancestral trauma and
I
that
didn't use that word, but that's a good word.
you do not. Okay, that's probably where my brain processing what you're saying. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a really big subject, and I mean, I know that's a difficult question to answer because I'd find that hard to answer with what I do as well. So, but just to give a little idea, a picture of what a session with you uh,
Mm.
be like.
Yeah, that's sure I think that makes it very practical, doesn't it? And super relatable. So I guess because maybe it's good to sort of rewind a bit and say, so I I would say my healing journey or my interest in um healing and my doula journey kind of in a way accelerated or kind of blossomed at the same, it's very similar time. So
Yeah.
I became a mum in 2009, and I initially trained in massage. And because I was in that stage of life myself, lots of my clients that I was seeing were postnatal or mums or parents. So, and I was really interested in that mind body connection and how bringing the body into a state of deep relaxation really could affect healing on lots of different levels with it, in this kind of physical touchment way of working with a client. And then I noticed that sometimes with some clients I could see energy
Mm.
around them, but I didn't have a framework to understand that at that point. I started my doula training in 2012, and in 2013 was when I met the teacher that I have that's taught me the healing modality that I still, that I have used for myself and use with my clients. And so that's when I started as well working with birth clients in 2013. Well, 12, 13, I started my journey as a birth doula. And so I was really interested in being in the birth space and being with clients and kind of being aware of these different levels of reality, if you like, the physical dimension, the emotional dimension, the mind dimension, the energetic dimension, and the soul dimension, and how they all kind of related to each other and how they're all connected. And because my first training with my birth clients was, as a doula, and so a lot of that sessions with them is always a lot about listening. It's a lot about kind of them debriefing stuff with you. I mean, the power of listening is healing in and of itself. If you get the opportunity to sit and be listened to by someone who really has very good capacity around that, that is a transformational experience, to be held in a kind of unconditional positive regard, and to be, really have that person put their own agenda aside and listen deeply to you and ask really good questions. I think that's the foundation of any kind of therapeutic relationship or healing relationship. And I think that's one of the, that's a pillar of doulaing. And I see it when I'm running the developing doulas training, that it's such a beautiful thing for these new doulas to come into that space and really be held and witnessed through the listening. So in with my doula clients, that's a massive foundation. And I think even when I'm in a healing session with any, could be with someone trying to conceive or a parent, or any other kind of client, that there's a chunk of it which is really about listening and really kind of holding space for what they need to say and what they need to kind of offload, and asking questions in that respect. And so the second sort of part of that is the energetic part. And as I went on my kind of doula journey, I started weaving this energetic dimension in to my sessions with my birth clients, postnatal clients, and the way that looks from or how it's experienced is that we would with a client, a bit like a client might be used to doing a hypnobirthing kind of relaxation or meditation. I would do a similar kind of thing with a pregnant person, where I invite them to kind of go within, and then using a kind of guided meditation, help them to get into a relaxed state of being. And then through the training that I'd been on, it helped what that did was sort of open up my receptivity to tune into that person's energy and receive information with their permission energetically for what's another kind of way of listening to them. So kind of beyond what they're saying with their, conscious mind or their conscious thought, I start tuning in, listening in to the energy of what their energy is telling me. And that might come through to me as a sensation or a feeling, or it could be pictures, or it could be words. That information comes from their energy body. And then together, through this process, I would guide them to help move energy, clear blocks. Could be a specific thought that was creating a kind of block in their energy, or going more to your point about ancestral trauma, it could be a past experience, possibly from this lifetime, maybe when they were a child, or maybe when there was something else happening where the bit of undigested energy sort of trapped in their energy field that would need gently, lovingly releasing. And then sometimes there could be something that needed to be released or undone or processed through. that could have been from a previous incarnation or some other kind of experience. So that really depends on the client in terms of where their consciousness is at around how I would language that.
Mm.
So the experience is of kind of having a relaxing meditation experience, and um, generally speaking, 99 times out of 100, they'll finish that experience. Maybe it takes half an hour, feeling, refreshed, uplifted, lighter. Sometimes it's cathartic. Sometimes they might cry in the session, or they might feel energy moving out of their body, or they might feel tingles, or they might see things in their imagination. Stuff changes for them, but generally speaking, by the end, they're feeling a lot more uplifted,
Mm.
and their energy is what we do right at the end. Is I ask for that kind of source energy to come in and fill up all of those parts of their energy field where they've just let something go.
Mm.
That's
That's
how the
amazing. And I've seen you in action a few times, and you're really, how you work is really beautiful. It's really nice, really space holding and really connected, really intuitive. And yeah, it's been
Thanks,
really
Eva.
nice. Aimee and I have worked together a few times, haven't we,
Yes,
over the years?
yes.
And it's always been really nice. We both come from different backgrounds with our training, but yet we see the same things. It's the same thing, isn't it, really?
Mm.
Which I find so interesting. Yours, I've written down your Shakti Durga's healing modality, Ignite Your Spirit. That's your training, is it?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, so my teacher that I met in, so I love this because I'm a doula, but
yeah.
I should say teachers, plural, are
Yeah.
actually a mother and daughter.
Oh wow.
So yeah, which I just think that's so lovely for my personality. But so I met them, both of them, in 2013. Gayatri is the daughter and Shakti Durga is the mama.
Okay.
And when I met Gayatri, she was 21 or 22, something really young.
Oh wow.
Um, and she was just this radiant being of like pure joy. And it was, I essentially went to a meditation at a friend's house who I hadn't seen for 10 years. That's a whole crazy story how that happened. I met Gayatri, and she ran a group healing session, and I just had not experienced anything really quite like it in my entire life. And I cried the whole way through. And I was just like, what is this? This is amazing. And then I found out that her and Shakti Durga, her mum, were running a retreat in Glastonbury, like I think 2 or 3 weeks later, and there was an open session for that. And I was like, I have to go. I have to go to that. But it was, it was initially it was sort of like there were lots of things in the way, and there was a childcare issue and one thing and another, and I was like, oh, but my heart just so yearned, wanted, like I with my whole being to be there. And then like it was just this bizarre thing where like my ex-partner called and said, oh yeah, well, I'm not going to go to that wedding anymore. I can have our daughter, she can come for the weekend. That weekend I know you wanted, and all these things kind of moved it out of the way. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can go. We had this crazy drive down to Glastonbury. There was four of us in the car, and I went to this beautiful. They'd been running a whole retreat, and it was the end of the retreat, the last kind of the one of the last sessions, and the energy was just something else. It was just I. It was something more than I had ever experienced, really. Um, and we chanted mantra together. There was singing, there was music, there was spiritual discourse, there was teaching discourse, there was energetic activation and meditation. And I was, I was just kind of moved to this other dimension of reality, really. I remember listening to the sound of her voice and it just feeling like I was in this timeless space where, time kind of had stopped really existing in the way that and
Mm.
normally understand it. And it was this very transcendental but also very embodied experience. And I kind of knew from that moment that really, wow, this is this is my kind of home base, really. I've kind of landed where I need to be. um and it was a very powerful experience. So that I knew kind of from that moment that this was, she was my teacher and that was my path. And then I've kind of been studying with her or within that school ever since. And Ignite Your Spirit therapy is the modality that she shares, which has different components, really, including quite a shamanic aspect to it, which is useful sometimes for some clients and not necessarily useful for all clients all the time. But I think one of the things that's been incredible for me is that through that training, it's really helped opened my intuition and my clairvoyance, or um, that kind of seeing or knowing or trusting on that other dimension. And also, just the other thing that's been so powerful is having that relationship and way of connecting to that source of unconditional love, which I think is ultimately the thing that is doing the
Mm.
healing.
Yeah.
Which so that's been really amazing, part of the path for
Mm.
me and what I
It's
wish to
amazing.
share with my
It's
clients.
yeah, it is amazing. What you do is really, really amazing. And it's so quite simple as well, isn't it? You
Hmm.
have when we've had clients before together that might have been in a slightly anxious place, and you've done your thing with them, and there's a real transformation in them. When we leave them,
Mm,
there's so much calmer, and
mm,
you can see they feel more connected within themselves. Um,
mm.
I've
Yeah,
got
it's true.
one person in my mind specifically that we worked with, that just really I could see the benefits with them.
Mm. I
Really.
have to say, Eva, that was definitely a teamwork. Teamwork is the dream work, because, and I think it maybe go back to your point of your you have a druid path, that's and it's very grounded in the land and um the seasons and the cycles of nature, and really rooted here, in the wisdom tradition of this land, of the Celtic tradition. You're going to say more about that than me.
No, that's what you said is fine. I'm nodding.
And as people might hear by, I said my spiritual name is Sri Lakshmi and my teacher's called Shakti Durga, and both of those names are from Indian tradition. So it's not, those names are from a different tradition. And so my teachers Gayatri and Shakti Durga are Australian, of a European heritage. They're white Australians. um and their teachers, Shakti Durga's had lots of different teachers over the years, but the two main teachers that she's kind of a, a lot, but not exclusively, of her work have been with two Indian um avatars really in India. So fully embodied, enlightened beings, one in the north of India, one in the south of India. And so lots of our practices are kind of gifted from that tradition, and those beautiful beings very, very much wish to share those practices which come from um, that culture and that heritage. And there's a lot to kind of, we could delve into that aspect of it, but just to say that I think to your point about actually when you and I have come together to work with a client, you might bring your drum, and maybe, that's, I don't have a drum, for example, but there's a way that because of us to connect in, which is kind of the same. And also, as you say, we've had some lots of kind of inner plane experiences where we see the same thing, we're tuned into this, we're having the same kind of experience, even though maybe our teachers have kind of come from different traditions. There's a lot of similarity as well.
At the end of the day, though, those modalities are a key to opening a doorway, aren't they? But we are spirit in a human body with the same anatomy spiritually, the same senses that
Yes.
open up in our body. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but
Yes.
the longer you develop in that, the more
Yeah.
open you become to picking up um, the atmospheres around you and working with your intuition, working with your
Hmm.
those
Yeah, I mean, I
the
suppose.
spirit realm. You work as well very much with, you talk about being in that space, but with other entities as well, if you like, don't you? Other energies like deities, ancestors.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I know you've picked up on those as well. Do you want to
Yeah.
share? Is there anything you want to share around that, or how
Yeah.
you
So I
feel
think.
that connection really supports people and how it supports you? Actually,
Hmm.
that's a good question. How does having that connection, it's actually two questions because deities and ancestors are very different things, but how do you find that supports you as a
My word.
practitioner and your
Hmm.
clients?
Hmm. So for me as a practitioner, I guess, even right at the beginning of my doula work, but before really I wasn't kind of signed off to being practitionering.
Yeah,
I would still go, and every client meeting I would go to, every birth I would go to, I would invoke before I would go. The clients didn't necessarily know that's what I was doing before. It doesn't matter.
yeah,
So for me, in terms of how it benefits me, is my spiritual practice and my strengthening of my connection ultimately to the divine void, to that field of unconditional love, is where I'm setting my intention every day, and where I'm setting my intention for working with clients. It's like, how do I align myself to that reality, to that and how do I serve from that place as best I can? It's not my small, what Aimee, what does Aimee want in this situation? It's more like, how can I serve fully, and in serving fully in a way that everyone gets served, me and the clients and everyone else, and kind of aligning to that. And so the practice of invocation, or it's like a prayer really, it's just asking for that to be aligned in that way to unconditional love ultimately. And then I would always invoke my teachers, Shakti Durga and Gayatri. I would always invoke there's two teachers in India. And then I would, from most of the time, I would invoke the archangels, for example. So that's from a Western tradition of the archangels. I would invoke, but also um, the goddess Durga from the Indian tradition. I invoke her as a, because my teacher is so connected to her, that's a very easy connection. And so for me, on the inner plane, all of these, the angels, the deities, they're all helping me to get as closely aligned into that unconditionally loving channel of support. And so I've been doing that since I got taught how to, which interestingly, even before I met Shakti Durga and I was having those experiences with the energy with the massage clients, um, of seeing the energy, I someone else completely separately just said, "Well, just say a prayer." She's like, she was Jewish. She said, "Say the Lord's Prayer or say any Christian prayer that you know before you start, and that will help protect you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It can be as simple as that.
Yeah.
But it's whatever's going to kind of line your energy up
Yeah.
and to be the most congruent with unconditional love. So that'd be one thing of like how it helps me.
Mm.
And then how it helps my clients, I think can be really different depending on their belief system,
Mm.
where they are, who they are, um, and what helps open their heart. And so, because especially in the birth space, but really in all of life, we know that oxytocin is the key, and that's to do with love and safety. And so often, it's a really simple thing. I might just say to a client, come, put your hand on your heart and kind of bring your awareness into your heart and think about something that feels really easy to love in this moment, or something you feel really grateful for. I mean, that could be Durga or Bridget or, any deity, or it could be your pet dog, it could be the ocean, it could be, so at a really fundamental level, that connection to love is where what we're aiming for.
Mm.
And that's, whatever works for the client is going to open their heart, and that's going to be the thing that's helpful. um Also, the piece about safety, and so building that trust is super important, and having that connection, um that's really important. But shall I tell the story? I always think it's a really cute story, in helpful in terms of those kind of inner plane experiences where you have confirmation.
Yeah,
This is a you and
do.
me situation.
You
Do you know
do
what I'm
tell
going
a
to
story.
say?
Do you know what's really funny is that every time I think, oh, I'm going to ask her about this. I was going to ask you about Durga a little bit, and you went to talk about it, and I was just thinking, I really want to hear a story from you, and you've just said, I'm going to tell a story.
Well, I just think this is a
Funny.
brilliant story because it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
I
too.
think it was a couple of years ago, and we were chatting on Messenger. You and I were chatting on Messenger about something, and you were like, "Aimee, are you quite anxious at the moment?" And you like something, you feel a bit ungrounded. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I think I am actually." Now you've pointed it out, and I stopped typing to you, and I just took a moment and I started to do a grounding exercise, and I tuned in, started putting my roots down into the earth, like release, releasing kind of fear and letting my energy body kind of settle. Sitting there, eyes shut, tuning inwards, and then I was like, I could see on the inner plane these little beings, or these beings, and I was like, that I'd never seen before. And I was like, these are Eva's guides.
I think I remember this. I remember you, yeah.
Type back, Eva, did you ask your guides to come and help me? I did. And I was like, wow, that's so, because talking about different traditions, I might they felt very earthy to me. They felt like um they felt different because I hadn't met them before. Um and I had a sense of these kind of these beings that were there that were just kind of standing gently around me, kind of, like holding space as I kind of connected into the earth. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. It was a very sweet story. It was so very good. Like, oh yes, we can do this together, Eva, even though we
Yeah,
might have
that's
different
really
inner
nice.
plane helpers.
Hmm.
It's all good.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm,
And it's amazing, isn't it, when something like that happens and you can't describe it. And we wouldn't have spoken
mm.
about that before. Um,
No, no, no. It was just very, yeah, that was very there.
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
We've had other times, haven't we, where we've been with people and that lady we were with a few years ago and we both saw her father um, as well in the room,
yes, had
support
come into the space.
coming into the space while we were doing a closing ceremony with her, weren't we?
Mm, yeah,
Healing ceremony. Yeah. I've
yes.
got so many questions to ask you, but it's keeping it relevant to the subject. We were going to talk about sacred space, weren't we? That was going to be one of the, we've kind of talked around it a bit, but for you, you know, um, trying to think of the right way to word the question. Um, you have different types of clients, some that you might hold sacred space for more, and some that you won't hold sacred space for
Mm,
because it's just not what they want, and others that you do. To you, what does sacred space kind of mean to
mm.
you in, as a um yeah,
Yeah, I guess.
yeah, that's my question. That's simple. What does sacred space mean to you in holding that space for your clients, for their birth
Mm,
or for
well,
their
I guess that I would call, regardless of, I guess, like in for some clients, they're going to want the language to be very overtly spiritual. That's going to be the
Mhm.
language that I might use, and they're going to enjoy the tools and they might enjoy candles and maybe using incense, or um they might want to create an altar, for example, or they might want to do birth art that's and bring in their own guides or their own spiritual imagery or spiritual words. And then for others clients, they that would not work for them, and that wouldn't open their heart, that would kind of turn them off. And it's enough for them that all that I would talk in a way that was just much more about love, maybe even more scientific kind of terms about oxytocin, or and I would leave out the things about that would might feel a little bit off-putting. Although I find it fascinating, for example, just with there's a Kristen Neff has done all of this research about compassion, for example. So there is getting more and more scientific research that kind of validate a lot of, the things that we and many amazing teachers and um, traditional spiritual paths have taught um, around. So there is getting to be more research and scientific kind of crossover. So it really just is about meeting the client where they are. And the sacred space holding is really an internal process that I'm doing.
Mm.
And that is the same. And that is to do with how much, that I, as a birth worker or as someone holding space for people, that I'm doing my work every day to keep myself in a process of self-reflection, kind of taking care of myself, doing my own healing work, taking, investing in all of those things that mean that I can show up for my clients and be that as much loving presence as I can possibly be. And then it doesn't really matter, like, whether they call me Aimee or Sri Lakshmi, or, whether, sometimes it's lovely to wear kind of more ceremonial clothes, and other times you can just be in tracksuit bottoms and a t-shirt. But, and you can still bring that loving presence. And I guess that's what, for me, sacred space is: loving presence. And that's an embodied thing for me as a doula or birth worker. Um, and I think when we give that to our clients, that's a beautiful gift. And even, when we give that to our children, that's a beautiful gift. Holding space for our children as parents, and even for each other in community. Is that being that embodied
space of safety, isn't it? A space of feeling safe.
Feeling safe and feeling like, and we could talk about it from a nervous system point of view, that if I'm regulated as much as possible, then I will be that co-regulating person for the person in labour, or the person that's come to see me for a session, like antenatally or postnatally. I don't know, you've probably had this experience, Eva, as well, where this was, very straight up postnatal work, but I'd, go around and see my clients who, in their early days of parenting, who might be breastfeeding, and they'd say things to me like, "Oh, the baby's so much better behaved," in inverted commas, "when you're here." And I would say, that's nothing. That's, what's happening is you are more relaxed that I'm here. And just that we're chatting and talking, and your whole system has just done a big, massive exhale because I'm here listening to you. And the baby is just able to be more settled in your arms. So it's not, it's almost, I think that's sacred space holding,
Yeah, definitely. And that's without any training in any other modality, isn't it? That's just being
Yes.
doula.
Yeah.
Being that
Yeah,
person
and I
that
think
they trust, that they've worked with, that you've worked with, that you've got that connection with.
Yeah, and I'm so passionate about doulas and birth professionals really taking time and investing in their own. We can call it self-care, but I think that's like not a, it's a bit of a watery term for something that's so, like, profoundly important.
Yeah.
But but if we're not embodying the things that we kind of say to our clients, like, what does your, we might, with a client who's pregnant and is navigating the maternity system, and we're saying to them, tune in. What does your intuition say once you've read the risks of induction, or the risks of not having induction? And what does your gut say? What does your intuition say? Well, if we're not actively doing that in our own lives, we're not going to be so good at holding space for them to do it themselves. So I think, for me, being a doula has been this invitation into, like, amazing self-reflection and healing of, so that I can show up better for my clients and for my family and all my other relationships.
Yeah, I hear you. I completely agree with you as well. That kind of brings us on to your course for birth professionals, sacred birth. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Mm,
Which I've done
yes,
as well. I sat with it on it last year. It was last
yeah,
year,
you
wasn't
were.
it?
It was. It was very lovely to have you there as the Doula UK stamper of sealer of approval person. That was very lovely. Yes.
It
And
was
we've just
really
started.
lovely. It was a really nice course, really good.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to perhaps be joining in on some of your helping you, supporting you a bit with your training that you're going to start next year, which is exciting. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
back to
Back to you.
back to me, Sacred
Sacred birth.
Birth. Well, we just started. We did this is week one of the fifth iteration of the container of this mentoring group. And it's always lovely to start it, or it's always lovely to do it. It runs across, it's actually now 19 weeks. So it runs over winter and it finishes in spring equinox. Kind of starts some point after Samhain or Diwali, as we really start feeling, oh, yeah, the clocks are going back or forward, I can't remember, back. And it's getting darker and it's a beautiful community where we can really explore this multidimensional reality in relation to our workers, doulas, birth keepers, or even, anyone who's working with pregnancy and birth and postnatal, antenatal teachers, yoga teachers, who really wants to kind of hold a more embodied sense of loving presence for their clients. And we cover various different topics. We do healing meditations every week, group healing. Um, and it's always a really beautiful deep dive. And the aim really is to kind of nurture ourselves through those darker months and then come into the spring with a kind of a bit more of a spring in our step and more vision, clearer vision, clearer focus. What are we birthing ourselves as birth workers into the following spring? What do we need to let go of? What are we nurturing and where are we going? Where are we headed? So that's what happens. It's
Mm.
very lovely.
And it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? Because those healing meditations are really, I just remember them being really insightful.
Mm.
Well, it can be as insightful as you want it to be for yourself, can't it? You can really go deep
Yeah,
with
it does. I think you're right in
really,
that space.
yeah, it's incredible. It's really, really, um,
Mm.
it's more than you've described, I think. And it also gives you more skills as well, in a way. Um,
Yeah, we talk about, for
mm,
example,
yeah.
um, like practical things around how to clear the energy that we might take away from a birth, unconsciously. How do we look after our own energy in a birth space or with clients? And there are practices and tools that you can start using once you've learned them to help keep your energy feeling clean and good and not walking around um,
Mm,
with other people's stuff in your energy field. So that's pretty practical.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then there's things, I think you're right about the healing meditations because in that group, I know everyone is kind of they're there really to go quite deep with their own personal healing. And so some quite profound things can come through and big shifts can happen. We cover things like what are our money blocks, which it sort of sounds like simple on the surface, but when we're going really deep into that, what is it that holds us back from feeling worthy to receive and really open in that way? It can be some chunky stuff that comes up. around
Definitely,
that.
definitely. And I kind of see doula work as being quite a soul path. It's
Mm,
walking a path of your spiritual path, serving people, helping people, serving a greater whatever you want to call that, that
yeah,
greater that is within us all. And I
yes.
think your course really helps with that, with helping you to just stay in that space and walk
Mm,
your path um, as best as you can for you, really,
mm.
and for your clients. I don't know if I'm describing that very well, but
No, I think you're right because I think
it's
everyone,
really,
I think, at least as far as I can tell, the people who come into birth work, doula work, they're coming from kind of a deep, passionate feeling of being called into the work. And it can be super hard, right? Because we can see a lot of trauma. We see the way that the systems, maternity system, kind of not always acting in the most loving way towards the people who are using it.
mm,
So we see harm that gets perpetrated in maternity care, and yet we're called to do this service um, for the individual, to really be there and hold space and love that individual woman or birthing person and her baby as she goes through this amazing portal of transformation. But also that I think most doulas have this kind of feeling of like there's so much power for collective healing when we bring love into the birth space. And so I think you're right that there is a big service aspect to and spiritually service aspect to doula work. And sometimes we need to meet our own shadow in that um sacred service from the highest vibration is very much is a very open-hearted give and receive expression. And if we've got some kind of like stuff that needs cleaning up around our own self-worth or our own value, which we all do, because we do, because that's like
mm,
what it's like to be incarnated at this point, then sometimes we need to kind of there's often we'll get challenged around things that with boundaries around time, with money, with actually I've gone beyond my capacity with, I've given too much in that relationship, and so these are the kind of ways that we need to fine tune ourselves so that we are um working towards this soulful path of sacred service and not kind of getting caught up in the some of the pitfalls around that, which I know I do. And I think it's very common, but it's kind of keeping on reminding to come back to that intention.
yeah, definitely. Um, I'm just thinking, what else have I seen that you do that you could? Is there anything else you would like to talk about or share? We're coming up to the end of this time now, and
Mm,
yeah,
let
you
me
do
just
online meditations as well, don't you, for clients, for parents, as
yeah,
one-to-one
I've
sessions or as
run
group
some
sessions?
online meditations and sometimes some mantra practice in the morning, and I have done that over the last couple of years. At the moment I don't have any scheduled, um but yes, some that is sometimes something that I can offer. Feel very keen to offer things in person as much as possible. I mean, my
Mm,
one-to-one work is often on Zoom, but I love an in-person group gathering. Um, it's always very nourishing, isn't it?
You do in-person meditations as well, don't you? Well, you have done
Yeah.
in London and in
Yes.
Brighton.
Yeah, London and in Brighton. I guess one of my intentions, it might be worth saying, for 2024 is really to kind of build on that and kind of be supporting the birth community, the doula community around that. So I do intend to do some more in-person group community gatherings, which I know you've always been really great with as well, Eva.
Yeah, that would be amazing. If you could do a group meditation for doulas, that would be lovely, and I'd be there.
Well, I know we've talked as well. We should perhaps think about it. Do you remember we talked about you doing your walks?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Well,
started to. They weren't hugely popular, so I stopped.
that's
They
so
were
funny, isn't it?
antenatal walks.
No, but do you remember we talked with Zoe? And you remember the other doula Zoe about doing more like shamanic walks to sacred places in Sussex?
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's an idea.
That is a great idea. Yeah. Another one to add.
Yeah, I know, to the to-do list.
Um,
Um,
before we go, I do want to ask you a question. Have you got any stories that you could tell around supporting a client? Any stories that jump out at you that you would want to share of really good outcomes of the work that you've done with people, or something that's been quite insightful having worked with a
hmm,
client?
I guess what's coming up to share would be this one. Okay, so I think I might have shared this with you before, but I've had a couple of experiences. So what I would say to anyone who is preparing for their own birth is that there is so much inner plane support for each birth. And and so just I don't for me the birth angels, there are angels specifically whose job is to hold space for incoming souls, babies to be born. And when you connect with them, that is just the most amazing feeling. It's not happened to me every single birth that I've been to, but it has happened. I have been able to really sometimes see with my eyes
Mm.
or feel very profoundly this loving presence. And I know that it's always there, and it's to do with me and how tuned in I am or not to do with
Mm.
them not being there when I'm not, so consciously aware of it. But I think so. I know that is happening for every single birth that happens, wherever it happens,
Yeah.
where, and that happens in all settings. And and so knowing that can be, I think, really helpful, that there is always inner plane support, and that we all are connected to our unconditionally loving guides who are going to help us, and archangels always wanting to help us. We just have to ask, because it's a free will universe. So we have to ask.
Mm.
I've had lots of amazing experiences with that. And then I guess for maybe a helpful thing for birth workers
Mhm.
is that I have had
That was going to be
amazing
my next question. You've done it again.
um for birth workers, I think it can be really hard for our personalities because we get so invested and we want it to go a certain way. We want things to be the best possible way that they could be, and we want the midwives and whoever else is going to show up to be on our wavelength and support in a way that doesn't always happen. So I think one of the tools that's helped me, the invocation at the start, and then always really the sending love, connecting in, pulling, connecting and pulling through the energy of unconditional love, and sending that to the people that are going to be around the birth, to help you to always remember this. I think this, what this does, or my experience of what this does, is it helps to pull forward from each person that comes into the birth space their the best part of them, because we're all a mixture of, we have bad days and we have good days, right? And we can feel grumpy about something, or we can feel okay about something. And generally, if we send love to a person or a situation, it's going to help that person to express in the most loving way back to us. And I've seen very grumpy midwives turn around through that practice. And that, I think, is really helpful. And the other practice that I think is really helpful is one of cutting our cords of attachment to outcomes, and really trusting that everyone's soul is ultimately more in charge, and that we as doulas or birth keepers can't ever, our personality might not ever know the why of how something turned out. All we can do is bring our very best, most compassionate, loving presence to that situation. And then there's a part that we just have to surrender and hand over. And I think that's really important. And that's what kind of can help us stay in the work over the longer term.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes with time, doesn't it? It takes time to do that. Yeah. Do you have any final kind of top tips to parents if you've got time still? Because we have gone over now. I knew we would. We're going to need a part two.
Tips for parents.
Aimee bonus, special.
I think that cut and call back your power thing for parents is super helpful as well.
Yeah.
Because I think in the run up to giving birth, we naturally, our personality, our mind wants to run through every single scenario and think, what if, from what our personality thinks of as the most positive outcome to like the worst case scenarios. And obviously some people's propensity might be more towards negativity or optimism, but all the time we're doing that, all the time our mind is kind of like creating these scenarios, we're putting these little energy things out there. And the tool of cut and call back your power really helps to release our expectations and our attachments. And one of the things that I do with my pregnant clients a lot is that exercise, and then really let them kind of go inward and kind of connect to love within themselves, however they best want to do with that, and then kind of open into the unknown in terms of our mind, but the kind of the security that lives within themselves, which is that connection with unconditional love, and kind of let things evolve and evolve and unfold from that place and that vibration. That would be my top tip for pregnant people.
Thank you. It's been really lovely chatting with you. It's been really nice, really comfortable. And I hope it's been okay for everybody listening as well, because we know each other quite well. So it's easy to forget that we're actually recording a podcast. I found.
Yes.
Yeah, so to find out more about Aimee and what she does, you can find her website, which is www.aimee, Aimee, Hamlyn, HAMLYN.co.uk. And on Facebook, it's the Facebook, obviously their website, and Love Connection Transformation. Is that right?
That's my Facebook handle,
Your
yeah.
Facebook handle, and your Instagram handle, that's the right word, handle, is Aimee, AIMEE, lower score. Is that
Underscore.
underscore?
Un-
Aimee underscore Hamlyn, HAMLYN. And where would
then
people
that's
find
under.
out about your Sacred Birth course?
So you can there's information about that on my website. And yeah, I'll be opening their waiting list for November of next year. But I just have to say that I have a B in my surname, which you missed out twice.
Oh, I missed it out twice. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's Aimee, AIMEE, HAMBLYN.co.uk. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Okay. It's
And
a
then
Cornish name.
Instagram would be AIMEE underscore HAMBLYN. That's really silly that I did that.
And then that's also underscore healing now
In
in
your
Instagram.
Instagram.
Hmm.
Okay.
But they're fine. I think I have such an unusual spelling of Aimee and Hamblin that even if you just put Aimee Hamblin in Google, it finds all my things because I don't know if there's anyone else with, as far as I can tell, there's no one else on the internet with my name.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And your the way you spell Amy is quite is a is yeah, AIMEE, not AMY, isn't it?
Yeah, the French way.
Ah.
It means love. It means beloved.
It does, doesn't it? My sister's called Amy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone listening. And
Cute Eva.
yeah. Thank you. And until next time.